After I developed the artificial intelligence logistics software that saved the company from ruin and transformed it into a $200 million giant, the only thing our CEO, Mr. Lawson, offered me at the so-called appreciation meeting was a crumpled $50 bill. The new director of AI operations, however, was Kyle, a man who couldn't tell a database from an Excel spreadsheet if his life depended on it. I smiled, took that insulting $50, and walked out of the room in silence, head held high. What they didn't know was that in that moment, as I pocketed that measly bill, I was already writing the first line of my revenge. My name is Megan Walker, and teaching them the true meaning of appreciation was about to become their most expensive lesson. The boardroom was silent, except for the steady ticking of the antique clock mounted on the wall. I sat at the long glass table, fingers loosely interlaced, my expression calm. But underneath, my stomach churned. I had spent the past year dragging this company, Logicorp, once circling the drain, out of oblivion. And now, I was being called into a special recognition meeting. I should have known something was off when I saw Kyle there, slouched in the chair next to mine, spinning a pen between his fingers like he hadn't just spent the past year doing the bare minimum. No late nights, no weekends, no breakthroughs, just showing up half present and taking credit wherever he could. "Thank you both for coming," said Mr. Lawson, our CEO, as he stood at the head of the table. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Megan," he began, glancing at me, "we all know what an asset you've been during this difficult transition." I nodded once, controlled, polite, waiting. "You took a broken system," he continued, "made it smarter, faster, more scalable. That AI logistics software you developed, it turned our entire process around. Our profits this quarter are historic, up 300%. That's something." "Thank you," I said. It wasn't false humility. I knew what I'd done. Every sleepless night, every bug fixed at 3 a.m., every server crash that I personally rewired back to life, it had all led to this moment. At that moment, there was a glimmer of hope within me. Perhaps finally I would get the recognition for my efforts. Lawson chuckled awkwardly, then turned toward Kyle. "And Kyle, your leadership potential has really begun to shine." My smile froze. Leadership potential? This was the guy who once confused a database with a spreadsheet. "Which is why," Lawson continued, "starting next week, Kyle will be stepping into the new Director of AI Operations role." The words didn't register at first. I heard them, but they didn't land. Director of AI Operations. That was my department, my team, my creation. "Wait," I said, my voice still calm but lower now. "You're giving the promotion to Kyle?" Lawson raised a hand as if anticipating my protest. "Look, Megan, you're brilliant. No one's questioning that. But leadership, it's about more than just innovation. It's about presence, confidence, charisma. We need someone who can represent us to investors. Someone who looks the part," I finished for him. He hesitated, then shrugged, unapologetic. "Business is perception." Kyle smirked from his seat, finally sitting up straight. "Hey, no hard feelings, Megan. I mean, I'll still need your brain, obviously, but now you can focus on what you do best. Tech." That's when it happened. Lawson reached into his blazer pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tossed a crumpled $50 bill onto the table. "For your effort," he said. "Consider it a gesture of gratitude." The room tilted. $50 for creating an AI platform that turned a dying logistics company into a $200 million market leader in less than a year. $50. I stared at the bill, then back at Lawson, at Kyle, who was already texting someone under the table, probably his golf buddy, probably someone else who thought charisma equaled competence. I didn't speak, didn't argue. Instead, I picked up the bill, folded it in half with deliberate care, and slid it into my pocket. "Thank you," I said softly. Lawson gave me a confused look. "You're not upset?" I smiled. "No, I'm just excusing myself." Then I stood, heels clicking on the floor, and walked out without looking back. No door slam, no speech, just silence. Because I knew something they didn't. They thought I'd feel humiliated, that I'd shrink into the background and keep working quietly while Kyle paraded around in a title he didn't earn. But what they didn't realize was this. I never needed their validation, and I never stayed quiet out of weakness. I stayed quiet because I was thinking. And the next morning, that's when everything changed. That $50 bill, a symbol of their arrogance and my silent resolve, was resting in my pocket. And that symbol would soon become their biggest regret. The next morning, I arrived at work at exactly 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than usual. The front desk security guard looked surprised. "Didn't expect to see you today, Megan." I gave him a small smile. Habit, I guess. But the truth was, I needed to see it. All of it. One more time. The system I had built, the team I had trained, the foundation I had laid. Because when something's about to fall, you study the cracks before it crumbles. When I stepped into the elevator, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirrored panel. Calm face, neat hair, eyes tired but alert. You'd never guess the storm that had just been handed to me in the form of a wrinkled $50 bill. The doors opened to the third floor, my floor, or rather, what used to be my floor. My office door was open. Boxes already sat stacked against the wall with my name scrawled in marker. And sitting at my desk, feet propped up casually like it was always his, was Kyle. He had moved in without even pretending to be subtle. A coffee mug with his name on it sat beside my monitor. The same monitor I'd bought myself last year because its budget didn't allow for upgrades. "Oh, hey," he said when he saw me. "Didn't expect you to come in." I didn't respond right away. I just walked in, slow and steady, like I still owned the place, like nothing had changed. And for a moment, I saw a flicker of unease on his face. He straightened up a little. "I just came to grab my things," I said, gesturing to the boxes. "Right, of course." Kyle cleared his throat. "Listen, I hope there are no hard feelings. You're still part of the team, obviously, just in a different capacity now." "Different capacity," I echoed, arching an eyebrow. The audacity of this man was unbelievable. "Lawson's putting you on a special project. Something about updating legacy systems for the support team. Should be fun, lots of back-end cleanup." Back-end cleanup. I almost laughed. I'd just written the most advanced logistics AI in the industry, and they were assigning me to fix printer queues and corrupted spreadsheets. This was beyond humiliation. This was blindness. "Sounds perfect," I said dryly. Kyle didn't pick up on the sarcasm. He was too drunk on his own petty victory, oblivious to the realities unfolding around him. As I walked down the hall with the boxes in my arms, people glanced at me, then looked away. No one said anything. No one stopped me. Funny how quickly people forget the one who held the walls up when they were caving in. I made it to the back corner of the building, the support department, tucked away like a forgotten storage closet. A desk with a half-broken chair and a flickering monitor waited for me. I sat down slowly, staring at the mess of cables and dust like it was some kind of joke. But I wasn't angry. Not really. Not yet. I was calculating because what no one here knew, not Lawson, not Kyle, not even E.T., was that the software I developed wasn't entirely stored on the company servers. The foundation was there, sure, but the real power, the advanced version with proprietary deep learning modules and predictive routing, that lived elsewhere. It lived on an encrypted private server under my control. The version the company had was good. The version I kept was revolutionary. They had no idea. At that moment, sitting at that dusty, forgotten desk, I felt the plan blossoming inside me, perfect and flawless. They thought they had relegated me to a corner, but in reality, they had pushed me to the very starting point where I would change everything. While Kyle was giving some lame speech to the staff about new leadership energy and scaling success, I pulled out a notepad and began sketching something. Not code, strategy, By lunchtime, I had made my decision. If they didn't want me here, that was fine. I wouldn't fight them. I wouldn't beg for a title. But I also wouldn't sit quietly and let them profit off my work while pretending I didn't exist. They wanted a leader? I'd give them one, just not here. That afternoon, I sent out 3 messages: quiet, private, deliberate. One to Eleanor Vance, our ex-CMO, who had left after her budget was slashed despite tripling lead conversion. One to James Petrova, our former infrastructure lead, who had walked when Kyle tried to override a server upgrade and nearly deleted 6 months of analytics data. And one to Sophia Chen, the only other engineer who understood my code well enough to recognize its full potential. None of them replied immediately, but I knew they would, because just like me, they had been underestimated, dismissed, overlooked. We weren't victims. We were visionaries, misfiled as side characters in someone else's story. But that was about to change. I stared out the office window. The city skyline stretched in the distance. The company I had saved was about to collapse again. And this time, I wouldn't be there to catch it. Because I wasn't looking back. I was building forward. And when I was done, they'd remember who they passed over for $50 and wish they hadn't. At that moment, I felt that the $50 bill was actually the first installment of my freedom and their destruction. By the end of that week, all 3 had responded. Eleanor's message came first. "I've been waiting for this call. Tell me where and when." Then James, "If this is about what I think it is, I'm in, no hesitation." And finally, Sophia, "Still have your prototype? Still think it's the future? Let's build." 3 simple replies, 3 doors opened. This wasn't just a beginning. It was the birth of an alliance, a resistance. We met on a Sunday afternoon in a quiet corner booth of an old industrial-style cafe on the east side of the city. No one wore suits, no laptops were opened. It looked like 4 friends catching up over overpriced coffee. But what we were building over that scratched wooden table wasn't just conversation. It was a revolution. "I still can't believe they passed you over," Eleanor said, stirring her tea with mechanical precision. "You didn't just keep them afloat, Megan. You made them a powerhouse." "Doesn't matter," I replied. "They gave me $50 and sent me to fix printers." That was their answer. James let out a low whistle. "I should have expected it. You know what Kyle told me before I left? That some people are just better at looking like they know what they're doing." "Sounds about right," Sophia muttered. "But we're not here to vent, are we?" "No," I said, and pulled out the small leather folder I'd brought. Inside was the blueprint, not just for the software, but for the entire business model. Logistics AI, yes, but with real-time predictive inventory, autonomous routing, integrated procurement optimization, and carbon impact tracking, all wrapped in a sleek modular interface that made it plug and play for any mid-size supply chain. This was miles beyond the old clunky system at Logicorp. This was the future. James's eyebrows raised. "You've been busy." "I never stopped working on it," I said. "I knew they'd try to own it eventually. That's why the real version never touched their servers." At that moment, I felt that my private server with those codes was my silent army. "You sure this is legal?" Eleanor asked, cautious but intrigued. Her question was natural. She always thought about the ethical and legal dimensions of business. "I built the foundation long before I ever joined the company. The IP is mine. What they're using is outdated. I didn't sign over the code. I signed over implementation rights for what I gave them, not this." Sophia grinned. "Then let's give the world what they never deserved." We didn't have seed money. We didn't have flashy investors or a downtown office. But we had talent, drive, and a product that could rewrite the industry. We worked in my living room, then later in Eleanor's garage. We shared a single server rack powered off James's old setup. We coded through the night. We ordered food like we were students again. Cheap, fast, and frequent. And slowly, something incredible began to take shape. We named it Echelon, a smarter, faster, cleaner logistics AI, built for the modern era. The kind of system that didn't just analyze data. It anticipated needs, predicted shortages, rerouted delays, and offered cost-saving alternatives in real time. This was something Logicorp's slow and cumbersome system couldn't even dream of. By the end of the first month, we had a working demo. By the end of the second, we had secured our first client, a mid-sized international warehouse network that had been looking to replace Logicorp's outdated legacy system for months. They didn't even flinch when we named our price. We launched Echelon in week 10, and within 48 hours, their operations were running 25% faster. This was a huge step for us, but the real tremor was just beginning, because our silent revolution was about to demolish Logicorp's hollow walls. But it was week 12 that changed everything. A headline dropped on the industry wire. Logicorp Systems faces major client losses after internal software glitches. I recognized the names. 3 of their top clients, companies I had personally onboarded during the AI rebuild, were walking away. All 3 were now in talks with us. Apparently, Kyle had tried to streamline some of the back-end modules. In doing so, he broke the load distribution system, crippling delivery times across multiple routes. They patched it, of course, but it was too late. The industry had seen the cracks. That morning, I watched, from afar, as news reached me, as panic began to spread at Logicorp. Emails flew back and forth, department heads got called into meetings, whispers circulated about someone being fired soon. And I just sat there, figuratively sipping my coffee, because while they were scrambling to salvage the present, we were already building the future. At that moment, I understood once more how that underestimated $50 bill was actually the most expensive lesson they were about to learn. That night, I walked into our shared workspace where James was tweaking the server and Eleanor was finalizing a pitch deck. I took a deep breath. Next week, we go public. Sophia looked up from her laptop. Press release, full brand launch, demo video, everything. Bold, James said, smirking. Necessary, I replied. They need to see what real leadership looks like. They need to remember the name they discarded. And I meant every word, because Logicorp hadn't just betrayed me, they underestimated me, and that would be their last mistake. The day our press release went live, the internet exploded. The headline was bold and unmissable. Former engineer behind Logicorp's $200 million turnaround launches new AI startup, and it's already disrupting the market. It was the story everyone wanted to read, a betrayal, a comeback, a quiet genius who was handed a $50 bill instead of a promotion and built an empire in return. Within hours, industry blogs, LinkedIn, and tech news sites picked it up. By noon, our inbox was flooded. We've been looking for an upgrade, let's talk. Is it true your system dropped error rates by 87%? We need what you've built, ASAP. These messages were just the beginning. Echelon's footsteps were echoing throughout the entire sector. At the same time, as I heard through the grapevine, something strange began happening back at Logicorp. People started looking at things differently. The same colleagues who once looked away when I passed in the hallway were now, I imagined, whispering about me with a new understanding, perhaps even a hesitant admiration. I could feel the questions forming in their minds from afar. Was it true? Had Megan really built all that? Was she the reason they survived? And then, why was she treated so poorly? By 2 p.m. that day, Kyle called an emergency meeting at Logicorp. He stood at the front of the conference room, noticeably paler, tapping a marker against the whiteboard like he needed the sound to distract from the growing tension. "So," he said, trying to smile, "this whole thing with Megan's startup, it's overblown. A lot of hype. Nothing we can't compete with." The room was silent. He continued. "We're still the leader in this space. Logicorp has the infrastructure, the legacy systems, the brand trust. One little tool isn't going to change that." No one in that room, I imagined, believed him. People were starting to connect the dots. They remembered who stayed late, who fixed the bugs, who wrote the roadmap, who rolled out the pilot version of the software that saved this company from bankruptcy. It wasn't Kyle. It was me. His empty speech only highlighted his incompetence and panic. That afternoon, Eleanor scheduled a product demo with one of Logicorp's oldest clients, a major food logistics firm that moved over 300,000 shipments a week. The CTO called us personally. "We heard Megan's behind this," he said. "She's the reason we stuck around at Logicorp as long as we did. But now we're ready to follow the real talent." I didn't smile, even though I wanted to, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about correcting the record. This was about recognizing my work and vision. Kyle tried to do damage control, sent out emails to clients, hosted a transparency webinar where he awkwardly explained their proprietary AI in broad, nonsensical terms. James, watching the stream from our workspace, just shook his head. "He doesn't even understand the core logic." "Of course he doesn't," Sophia said. "He was too busy schmoozing the VCs while we were writing neural pathways from scratch." The next day, 3 more clients left Logicorp. 2 came directly to us. The third said they were exploring options, which meant they were waiting to see if the rumors were true. So we showed them. Eleanor worked with a videographer to cut together a product reel. Real results, real impact, real data. We included testimonials from our pilot clients demonstrating just how much money and time Echelon was saving them. The video dropped on Wednesday morning. By Wednesday evening, we had 80,000 views. And then it happened. The investor call. Every quarter, Logicorp hosted a public update for stakeholders and partners. This one was meant to celebrate the end of their fiscal year, the year I had single-handedly saved. Instead, the call turned into a slow-motion disaster. The first slide showed a drop in client retention. The second revealed a 14% revenue dip despite market growth. And by the time the Quanda opened, someone finally asked what everyone was thinking. "Is it true that your former engineer, Megan Walker, built the original AI that saved this company?" Mr. Lawson's face on the screen froze for just a second too long. He recovered, barely. "Megan contributed to early models, yes, but the system is ours." The next question: "So why is she outperforming you now with fewer resources?" Another pause. More silence. Then, no further comments. The call ended early, and by Thursday morning, Logicorp stock dipped 8%. Eleanor sent me a message. "It's beginning." I stared at my inbox, at the new messages, the partnerships, the press interviews, the invitations, and then at my screensaver. A quiet photo of our team from that first week. Tired faces, hopeful eyes. We hadn't had $1 to our name then. Now, we were the ones setting the bar. That $50 bill was still in my desk drawer, unfolded, unspent. A reminder, not of humiliation, but of clarity. They paid me $50 for building their future. And now, I was taking it back. At that moment, I understood once more that that simple piece of paper was the most powerful motivator they could have ever given me. Their contempt had become my greatest fuel. By the start of the next quarter, Logicorp Enterprises was bleeding, and the industry could smell it. Clients weren't just leaving, they were running. The logistics forums lit up with complaints, slow updates, buggy rewrotes, data inconsistencies, downtime. Things our AI had eliminated were now back with a vengeance. Their support team, the one I was once demoted to, was overwhelmed. Tickets piled up, and Kyle was missing. Not literally. He still came into the office, but the smug confidence was gone. His tie was always loose now, his smile twitchy, his meetings shorter, and his panic less hidden. He was a ghost of his former arrogant self, haunted by the success he had tried to steal but couldn't manage. The final blow came on a Monday morning. Logicorp's largest distribution partner, one of the top 5 in North America, announced their transition to Echelon. We hadn't even pitched them. They came to us. "We're tired of duct tape and guesswork," their CEO told Eleanor on the call. "We want the original architect of innovation. We want Megan." That single deal was worth $18 million annually. It was also the last nail in Logicorp's coffin. The company that had once paraded my work as their miracle was now standing in the ruins of what they refused to protect. Internally, the chaos at Logicorp was palpable. Mr. Lawson was nowhere to be seen. Rumors floated that he was stepping down. The board was in turmoil, trying to understand how they lost a $200 million resurgence in less than a year. And the most poetic part? Every failed pitch deck, every broken promise, every angry client, they all trace back to one moment. The moment they handed me $50. That afternoon, I received an email from an anonymous address. No greeting, no signature, just a single line. They want to talk. I stared at it for a moment, then forwarded it to Eleanor. She responded instantly. Don't go. Make them come to you. The next morning, I got the official meeting request. Subject: Strategic Partnership Discussion. From Mr. Richard Lawson. Time: Friday, 10 a.m. Location: Echelon Systems HQ. Attendees: Richard Lawson, Kyle Jennings. I leaned back in my chair. Echelon Systems HQ. My company, my terms. James saw the invite appear on our shared calendar and chuckled. Should we prepare snacks or just bring popcorn? At that moment, the taste of victory had never been sweeter. They were on their knees, and I hadn't even had to raise my voice. Friday came fast. I wore not for drama, but for precision. A sleek, tailored suit. No logos, no distractions. The kind of outfit that said, I don't need you. You came here. They arrived right on time. Mr. Lawson looked older than I remembered, or maybe just tired. Kyle followed closely, visibly sweating. I met them in our boardroom, where the Echelon logo gleamed proudly across the glass wall behind me. Gentlemen, I said, gesturing for them to sit. Neither spoke at first. They were too busy absorbing it all. The clean architecture, the hum of productivity, the company I had built from scratch without them. Lawson cleared his throat. Thank you for meeting with us. I nodded. You asked. We believe there is an opportunity, he said carefully, to realign, share technology, possibly collaborate on licensing. I let the silence hang. Kyle jumped in a little too quickly. Look, Megan, we all know you're doing great things, but Logicorp still has brand equity, distribution, infrastructure. You're hemorrhaging clients, I interrupted. You've burned investor trust. Your last software update corrupted thousands of delivery chains, and 3 Fortune 500 companies named you publicly in breach notices. Kyle flinched. Lawson tried again. We're willing to offer you a leadership role, senior level, autonomy, competitive package, and naturally full ownership of the AI division. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, I said. You want me to clean up the mess while you take the credit again? Just like last time? No, Lawson said quickly. This time would be different. I leaned forward slightly, calm, sharp. You're only here because you thought I'd disappear, that I'd accept your scraps and stay quiet. You underestimated me once. You don't get to do it again. The room was silent. Then I stood. I didn't come here to rejoin Logicorp. I came here to end this. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. This is a formal acquisition offer. Echelon Systems will purchase all remaining Logicorp tech assets, patents, and software licenses. You walk away with dignity, but Logicorp ceases to exist. Kyle stared at me, mouth open. Lawson paled. You're buying us out? He asked, like he still didn't believe it. No, I replied. I'm giving you a way to bow out before the market does it for you. They didn't speak for a long time, and then quietly, reluctantly, Lawson nodded. I'll take it to the board. As they stood to leave, Kyle turned to me, voice low. You're really going to erase everything we built? I smiled just slightly. You didn't build it. I did, and I'm not erasing it. I'm preserving it, without you attached. When they were gone, I sat alone in the boardroom for a moment longer, thinking, breathing. They had come to me on their knees, and I hadn't even raised my voice. Because real power doesn't shout, it simply waits. And then, when the time is right, it takes everything back. The deal closed quietly, almost anticlimactically. No press release, no dramatic headlines, just a formal statement filed with the financial authorities. Echelon Systems acquires Logicorp Enterprises' remaining assets, including proprietary technologies and IP rights. One paragraph to summarize an entire era, and with that, it was done. The company I once saved no longer existed. The brand was absorbed, the patents archived, the software shelved permanently, replaced by Echelon, which had now become the gold standard across the logistics industry. Within weeks, our market share surged to 52%, then 58%, and still rising. Echelon Systems had gone from a scrappy underdog to an undisputed leader in under a year. It should have felt like triumph, and in many ways, it did. But something strange happened after the ink dried. After Kyle and Lawson signed over every last bit of their pride in a cold conference room, too ashamed to meet my eyes, I didn't feel revenge. I felt peace and clarity, because what started as a mission to prove them wrong had transformed into something much more powerful, proving myself right. A few weeks after the acquisition, I was working late at the office. My assistant buzzed in. "Megan, Mr. Lawson is here. He says it's personal." I hesitated, then agreed to see him. He looked older, defeated. He didn't ask for his job back, or for Logicorp to be resurrected. He simply said, "Whoa, I misjudged you, Megan, severely. What you've built with Echelon, it's remarkable." He offered a handshake. No hard feelings. I looked at his outstretched hand. "Mr. Lawson," I said, "some feelings are harder than others, but Echelon is always looking for talent, if you're ever interested in a fresh start under new leadership." He blinked, then a wry smile touched his lips. "Perhaps I'll send you my resume." He didn't, but the acknowledgement, however small, was there. The next day, Nova Systems, Echelon's parent company as we had grown and restructured, hosted its annual leadership summit, our first as a top industry player. CEOs, CTOs, innovators from around the world filled the grand hall. I stood at the podium, the stage lights warm on my skin, the weight of hundreds of eyes focused on me. But this time I wasn't nervous. I wasn't trying to win anyone's approval. I was here because I had earned it. As I wrapped up my keynote, I paused before the final slide. "There's something I want to leave you with," I said. "When people underestimate you, let them. When they hand you $50 and call it thanks, take it, not as a reward, but as a receipt." Laughter, applause. I smiled. Because when the world tells you that you're only worth what they decide, prove them wrong. Build something they can't ignore. And when they finally see you standing on top of the thing they tried to bury you under, just smile and get back to work. As I stepped off the stage, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't the end. It wasn't even the climax. It was just the beginning of a legacy built not from revenge, but from resolve, of a woman who took $50 and turned it into an empire.